In the blog that I posted last night, I said it was a thorough and candid report. Is that what you were hoping for?
Yes, absolutely, and thank you for that. Our effort here was to be completely candid, completely transparent. Um, we know we need to get better. We have to be honest about where we are, what our challenges are, and that's what the report was intended to make clear.
So, lots of interesting data in the report. One interesting thing is that you saw pretty good growth over the last year or so in terms of enrollment, but along with that growth came increases in the level of student challenge. You have a surprising, you serve a surprisingly needy group of kids. I think almost 70% kids living in or near poverty. In some schools, very high special education. I think a lot of that sort of debunks the sort of prevailing wisdom that online kids are, homeschool suburban kids. You guys are serving a more than representative population these days. Is that a fair assessment?
That's absolutely accurate, and I think it's interesting that families who choose to come to our schools are representative of families who are poor, using the free and reduced lunch eligibility criteria, and many schools, as you say, have higher percentage of students who are eligible for special ed than the states in which those schools reside.
Yeah, but families come to you for so many different reasons. It is a bit difficult to, you can't really pigeonhole them, right? Families are coming for lots of reasons.
They are coming for lots of reasons, but there's certainly a very diverse group of families are coming to us. It's not the way it was in the beginning of K-12.
Right. No, it's interesting. I mean, your numbers probably almost have flipped since the beginning, and just in terms of the proportion of kids living in or near poverty.
I'm sure that's true. This is my second year here. I don't have all the historical background Allison does, and she's
Allison Cleveland, who joined us, has some of that background. Hi, Allison.
Hi, sorry. I really do apologize for being a minute or two late.
Yeah, well, we want to spend a couple minutes just talking about the effects of poverty. This is a story that most school teachers in America really understand, the devastating effects of poverty, and you guys were pretty candid about that in your report, that that kids that are in low-income families, kids that are in a mobile situation, just aren't doing as well, right?
Yeah, I think the data that Margie has been able to pull together for the academic report makes it pretty clear. I don't think it's a surprise, so it's not a headline. It shouldn't be a headline, right? This is something that we've known for a long time. I think, to me, I've been at K-12 for a long time. It's almost surprising to look at this data in that, I think when you're serving kids virtually, you're serving all kids, and you're making, the teachers are committed to instructing all students, and you're not seeing your kids face to face every day. I think in some ways that's great, because you're not making excuses for your kids who are from low socioeconomic backgrounds. You have high expectations. You're not constantly seeing every day that they don't have the new shoes, they don't have nice clothes. I mean, you're just, as a teacher, instructing them in the way that you would instruct any student who needs help. And so I think the data that Margie has been able to write up is fabulous data, showing that we're actually serving these kids well, but I think we've been doing it just from the standpoint of, we have committed teachers and school administrators who are going to serve all of their students well, and when students are struggling with things, those teachers are going to figure out how to teach them. And it wasn't to us anything about like, oh, well, we have to try harder because they're poor. It was, we're just going to instruct every kid we have well. And I think to some of us, it's just sort of happened that, yes, this group of students has grown, But all along, we have just been committed, and we're getting better at serving every student we have, and we're realizing now that we have a much larger group of this student base that we need to make sure we continue to serve well and learn how to serve better, more importantly.
Right. So in the second half of our discussion, I'm going to have Nathan Martin talk about some of the policy aspects of this issue, and Dave Guyman, as an online teacher, is going to talk about the challenges of supporting kids in poverty. Your report goes into quite a bit of detail about what you're trying to do to better serve low-income kids, both in terms of youth and family services and academic services. It would be worth spending a few minutes on some of those. Some of those things you've been doing for a number of years. Some are relatively new. But Allison, could you list a couple of those?
Sure. I think some of the new things that we talked about yesterday in Academic Day, the social emotional learning. So this component of social emotional, really providing for the student their holistic needs. Now, obviously, we're virtual schools, so we don't have dentists in school buildings that are making sure children have dental care before or after school. But at the same time, we are now running and piloting in more places programs where there are people on staff who really are connected to the community and understand the community resources available to them, so that when we have students with these needs, we can plug them into the services they need. Teenage parents who need childcare to be able to do our program, making sure homeless students know where they can get shelter. And then on top of that, what we've been doing and piloted in several of our schools and are going to be expanding it next year is an idea of homeroom classes. So in virtual schools, you might not think of advisories or homerooms as being a part of school. The kids have their online courses and they log in every day, but especially to serve our at-risk students, we've been implementing homeroom classes or advisories where kids can come together and do this social emotional learning curriculum. We piloted a curriculum called Why Try this year, and I think we've got some encouraging results in not only helping kids with those needs that at-risk kids have, but also creating community and engagement and getting more kids hooked on learning.
Allison, let me just interrupt there. And Nathan is with Digital Learning Now, and Digital Learning Now is going to be issuing a paper on next generation guidance and advisory services in the next few weeks. And we're really happy that you guys have made some progress in that space. We think it's super important, and so look for more from Getting Smart and Digital Learning Now on this subject of advisories. I do think, Allison, it's really interesting that you are building in the social emotional learning into the advisory, and I'll have Dave Guyman talk about this a little later on, but there's sort of a stereotype of kids in a full-time virtual school having a less social situation and maybe not developing those social emotional skills. So Allison, I'm sure that curriculum helps, but address that sort of preconception.
Yeah, I think there are an awful lot of lonely kids sitting in bricks and mortar schools right now who don't feel particularly socially connected. We had an anecdote
or worse, who feel bullied and ostracized, right?
Right. So it is different, but we are getting feedback, and it's anecdotal at this point. We don't have official scientific studies, but we are hearing from more and more kids that through infusing the SEL curriculum, the social emotional curriculum, into the advisories, that students are feeling more connected than they did in their traditional brick and mortar schools.
It's interesting, and Guyman can talk about this later, that sometimes it may seem counterintuitive, but sometimes a virtual teacher and a student can create a stronger bond, and that student can experience a more personalized pathway than even a student in a traditional school.
Yeah, when our teachers are having conversations with students, there aren't 23 other students sitting in the classroom. They're having a lot of, there's the opportunity in virtual to have more one-on-one conversations, small group conversations, because the teacher is orchestrating the gathering of her students.
Wonderful, Margie.
All right. So, Allison, keep me honest here. In general, we found, I think there are two stories to be told. in the report. One is from the norm referenced perspective of Scantron, which we administer across all our schools for grades 3 through 10 in math and reading. We administer in the fall and in the spring. We had 86% of our students take both the fall and the spring, so it's a nice, precise measure of real school year growth. And in math and reading, we were better than the norm group gain, so that's a positive. On the state side, we looked at 23 of our schools, which represented about three-quarters of our enrolled population. And in math and reading and English language arts, we tend to underperform the state scores relative to percent at or above proficiency, which is not surprising given the large numbers of students who begin the year with us below grade level. And we define that, operationalize that as students who come into our schools or start the school year in the bottom 2 quartiles of the Scantron. So we're being very systematic in defining these terms in our report. Relative to state test scores in reading and math, we're more successful. Our students are more successful in reading than in math. When you look at free and reduced lunch eligibility, our students who are not eligible for free or reduced lunch outperform those who are eligible. When we look at students who stay with us over time, students who stay with us more than 2 or 3 years outperform students who stay with us a year or less. So we have a story of persistence that's good. We have a story of the impact of poverty that Tom was talking about early in the Hangout session. And I think what's powerful to me is that even before these data were all analyzed and presented in a formal way, our school leaders, under Allison's guidance, had begun to move in the direction of recognizing the diverse needs of our students. And we have programs in place last year in pilot, and this year more aggressively across our schools to meet the needs of every student who comes to us.
That is great. Maybe I should turn my, there you go. And Allison and Margie, are there takeaways? What's the next step? What is K-12 taking away from this report? And we'll just keep the conversation flowing here.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about that. I don't think the report told us a lot that we didn't know. It had some the persistence data on free and reduced lunch kids. That was data that was new, that we felt very encouraged by. But this idea that we know we have a math problem, that we need to find better ways to teach these kids math, that we still need to get better in reading, that we need to be able to engage students better, that we need to have better support services for our at-risk students. These were not new things for us to know, and I think we've been on a path in the last 18 months or so as we came over the course of a couple years to really understand better this population. I think we've been on a path. So my takeaway is it's stay the course and better implementation. We have a saying at the company: innovate, validate, replicate, a model that we like to use in thinking about how to serve our schools. And so innovation are the things that our school leaders across the country, things they want to try. They've read an article, they've heard about a third-party product, it's social emotional learning. It's those ideas that they have. They say, hey, I want to implement this in my school and see what kind of results I can get. And we let them do that whenever possible. And the key part there is that we study it, so that at the end of the year we don't say, well, did it work? Well, we don't know. So a lot of our business are people like Margie and other analysts who help us make sure when we try things that we're going to be measuring them in a way such that we understand over whatever time period we need whether or not we got the results we were looking for, so that we can be smart about the investments we're making. From innovate, when things look positive, we turn them into validate. And we may roll them out over 4 or 5 schools. We want to see, how does this work on a larger scale? How did it work in Georgia versus Minnesota? Were there differences there? But typically, what we'd like to see is that the replication stage shows that these things are still very promising, and then the validation stage, and then they turn into replicate, and that's when, as the leader of the managed schools business, I look at my regional vice presidents. I have 4 of them across the country, and we say, look, now's the time. We know this is the right thing to do. We're going to replicate this across every school we have. States are all very different, as you know, and so there's always a rule or regulation that changes what we can do or can't do in a state. But for the most part, we're using this model of innovate, validate, replicate to make sure we're being smart about the investments we make. But when we know that something is working well and is getting desired results, that we get it out to all of the schools as quickly as possible. So, takeaways from the academic report, I think we've got some promising practices. I think we've got some work to do, but I think we are going to stay the course. We have implemented models of data-driven instruction in all of our schools. I'd say our most mature schools are in their 3rd year, and those are some of the schools you're starting to see some good growth results. Static test results are going to be an issue with at-risk kids, but you're seeing in Agora and that's our school in Pennsylvania, and some of our other schools, we're getting good growth with the kids that we're serving, and those schools are a little bit further along. We've got other schools that really, this was the first year that they really implemented a very strong DDI model, data-driven instruction model, and you'll see for them, I think next year will be a period of even getting better at it, and then I think the 15-16 school year, by the 3rd year that you're doing something, that's when you're starting to get really good at implementation. So fidelity of implementation is something we talk a lot about here, and it's about making sure that all of our schools are executing things well.
And that kind of seems like maybe it would run right into Nathan Martin. Digital Learning Now just came out with all the report cards for the states.
Yeah, thanks. I can talk about this a little bit. And first, really excited to see this new report. We're so excited to see K-12 really, seems to be taking seriously the need for greater transparency, greater reporting, and greater emphasis on the kind of diversity of your student population and the type of students that you're serving, and the ways in which you're trying to differentiate your instruction and your practice to better serve those students. And so I'm really excited to hear about the emphasis on the socio-emotional side of things. This idea of the homeroom classes is really exciting, and just the ways that you guys are trying to take the model that you've used and build on that and make it better is an exciting thing. And when we look on a national scale, what our organization does as part of our organization is that we track state policies from state to state, because as Allison mentioned, state policy in one state might allow one form of virtual schools or online schools or one form of instruction, and another state might put other requirements on it, while a third state might not even allow online or virtual schools to serve students. And so what we're trying to see in virtual schools and testing fully online instruction is part of that equation, but we're trying to look at as a whole and seeing how policy can impact instruction and impact the level of attention that students are receiving, and we're trying to see how can technology help to better personalize instruction and just provide students with high quality digital learning. And so what we've seen in tracking through our report card, this is our 3rd annual report card that we do each year. We work with states. They fill out a survey based on different policies that they have. We then validate the answers to their survey, and we grade them against what we call the 10 elements of digital learning. And these 10 elements of digital learning came up with a number of years ago by Governor Jeb Bush, Governor Bob Wise, and a group of over 100 digital learning leaders from across the country. And they said these are some of the 10 things that are very important when you try to perform high-quality digital learning that you need to have. And so as we looked at states over the last year, and as we looked at them over the last 3 years, the first thing that we've seen is just an unprecedented amount of activity around digital learning. So you've seen over 1,300 bills in the last 3 years considered by state legislators, which is really an extraordinary amount of action. And then you've also seen 450 bills actually enacted. Each one of those bills, some of them to a great level and some to a smaller level, impact instruction, they impact what teachers, what providers can do to offering to students, and at the end of the day, they impact students themselves. And so what we've been trying to track is see what are these policies doing to help promote digital learning, and what are these policies doing to help slow down the pace of high-quality digital learning. And so in the last year, there was a lot of really exciting things that happened. So I'm going to tell you a little bit first about the good news, and then we can talk about the bad news. The good news is that states continue to make progress in this area. One of the most exciting states in the last year as far as really expanding options for students and trying to ensure high-quality digital learning is Nevada. Nevada made huge gains on our report card this year, partially due to a bill that they passed. It was SB 58, and it was proposed on behalf of the Clark County School District. And what it did was it really said, you know, digital learning is learning, so let's not put unnecessary and unhelpful restrictions on providers' ability to offer courses and options for students. And they expanded access, they removed some outdated restrictions, and we think that that's going to be an important step to helping to provide better quality instruction for students across Nevada. And we're really excited about that and excited to continue to work with them as they do this. Arkansas also really took the lead on this and passed a number of laws that helped bring their laws into the 21st century and make sure that students in their state can be served and can be treated with not be discriminated against necessarily because they're looking for virtual options or digital options. And Texas did some exciting things as well. They opened up a course choice marketplace, which allowed students, K-12 helps provide full-time online courses and things, but they can also, in states like Louisiana, they can be some of the part-time as well. And so we're excited to see states continue to pass laws and legislation which expand option and choices for students. Now, while that's really exciting, as K-12 and the other people on this line know, there were also, unfortunately, some setbacks in the last year. We see some states that while K-12 and while policymakers continue to try to differentiate policy and differentiate instruction for students, policy needs to be differentiated as well. And in states like Illinois, unfortunately, they took steps backwards rather than forwards. And passing broad sweeping legislation that put a moratorium on virtual schools. It was a one-year moratorium. And then this year, the commission that looked at this moratorium on virtual school, on the new virtual full-time virtual schools, voted to extend or recommended to extend this moratorium farther. Well, I think it's very important to have high-quality providers and high-quality options for students. You know, a one-size-fits-all sort of policy or blanket ban on full-time schools is not the way of ensuring that the right steps that are taken to help make sure that students have options now. In Maine, unfortunately, while Maine's been doing some great things, they continue to have resistance to expanding options for students. And just the other day, a ban on full-time virtual schools that Governor Page had courageously vetoed was nearly overturned, and it was one vote short of being overturned, which would have banned the creation of virtual schools, new virtual schools in Maine. So we're watching this very closely because we know that policy impacts practice, and the things that are happening on the state level as these hundreds of bills are considered each year have direct results on an ability of high-quality providers, whether that be K-12 or someone else, to be able to offer differentiated and excellent instruction to students. So on our level, we see a lot of promise and a lot of excitement as far as digital learning on the national level, but we recognize that each state is different and each state offers challenges and benefits for students, and so it's important for us to keep our finger on the kind of pulse of digital learning in the U.S. and make sure that high-quality options can be offered to students regardless of what state and regardless of what zip code that they might be in. And so we're excited to see K-12 take these steps in this report. We're excited to see them continue to try to figure out where are the areas that might be lacking and where can they help really zero down and focus on those students that need extra assistance, extra counseling, whatever that might be, and make sure that they can lift all students up and make sure that all students are being served well. So we're really excited to see this, and we applaud K-12 for taking these steps to try to make sure that there's greater transparency and a greater understanding of the students that they're serving.
That's great. And we have Dave Guyman, who teaches in Idaho, a full-time online middle school teacher, right, Dave?
Yeah, that's correct, Allison. And as I looked at this report myself, I found it very interesting that it accurately and very closely reflected the experience that we're having as a second-year accredited K-12 public school here in Idaho Falls, which is in the southeast corner of Idaho. In a district of about 20 schools, we ran a formative assessment earlier this year to gauge student growth and achievement, and just as the K-12 report has identified, we outperformed all of the other schools with the exception of 2 of them in reading. However, we received data back that shows that we can improve our instruction in math. I found that very interesting, but I also found it very promising that this report was very cognizant about the improvements that need to be made and also the successes that are being had as well.
Excuse me. Mary Gifford, welcome to the Hangout.
Good morning.
And can you tell us your role at K-12?
Absolutely. I am the Senior Vice President of Education Policy and External Relations. And most recently at K-12, I was over a region of schools. I oversaw about 13 schools in 8 different states. And before that was a school founder with K-12. And so I've kind of done it all. And right now my focus is on the education policy front. And much like we've talked about already, is trying to expand the options for students and get good policy in place to allow scaling and replication of high-quality programs.
Great. And can we talk a little bit about K-12's full-time to part-time students? What can we do to help? I'm not sure of the numbers in comparison how many full-time students to part-time, but Dave, you teach all of your students are full-time online students?
The 6th through 8th grade students that I teach are all full-time. I have about 40 students dispersed among those 3 grade levels, and they each use the K-12 curriculum full-time. However, our high school students can be, we use a different program for high school, so let me correct what I was saying. Our kindergarten through 8th grade are all full-time.
Okay. And do you see those students at any time face-to-face, or what's their...
It depends on the student's preference. We have 1 day a week where we get together as a student body and staff and we engage in social learning activities. Those are optional as set by our school policy, but we also have been in the process this year of creating what we'd like to turn into a blended learning room in the back of our central offices that students can either come and work for the day. If they want to get out of the house, they can work one-on-one with their teachers as we're all often at the office, or they can come and engage in different project-based learning activities. For example, I was brought on to the school staff in part to start a Lego robotics club based on the experience that I had with that. And so we are now going to be bringing our middle school students into that blended learning space to engage more in STEM learning through Lego robotics.
That sounds awesome. Mary, is there any, what's the implication for K-12 for part-time learning versus full-time students? Anything new in the report this year that K-12's thinking?
We actually do have a little chapter in the report this year on our blended learning options, kind of in tandem with our full-time virtual academies. We're finding, of course, that there is enormous need, a kind of infinite need for those blended models. And so some of our virtual academies, like in Agora in Pennsylvania, Arizona, California, we have different models that allow students to have that direct interaction. Arizona, we have a great partnership with the YMCA, and we have 21 different sites where students can come in and meet with teachers, paraprofessionals, work on projects, and it's a fabulous place. And those YMCA student sites really look like the communities they serve. In Pennsylvania and Chicago, we have more structured learning centers, and it really caters to the students in the more urban setting who really need this. If not for our setting, we don't know that they'd be schooling, and it really does get them caught up and ahead, and starts introducing some discipline instructionally so that they can then do more instruction virtually. But it's a really great blend, and what I really love about this whole space is that it isn't one size fits all, and we really can figure out how to flex to meet the kids' needs, and we can do it through multiple means, and just about every kid could benefit tremendously from at least one online course before they graduate. And so I think we need to continue to be creative in our approach and responsive, and I think the digital learning space is the place where we're going to do that best. I'm really excited about technical and career education things that we're seeing. So many states have adopted policies in that area, and I think we could be a real leader in the digital space on that, like anybody else. I think we can really scale that and get ahead there.
I think that sounds very aligned to the report. And Dave, with your experience, what's your response?
I think that the direction that K-12, especially being adopted by various state policies, is very promising. We're the only virtual online school offered by a public school district in our state. We're in our second year of operation as a fully accredited school. And in the first year, for instance, our high school had about 36 students registered for at least one class, and this year we're upwards towards 300. And so the scalability that K-12 is offering and the needs that are being met by their services are becoming very apparent, and they're very promising in the achievement and learning that we're seeing with our students here in Idaho.
Very encouraging. I don't think we have any questions from the audience. Nathan, do you have anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, I'm excited to see this report.
Looking?
No, I was just gonna say I'm excited to see this report. I'm excited to hear what's happening in Idaho and other K-12 schools as they, continue to think about ways that they can innovate and allow more interaction with students and a greater way of reaching students where they are and helping to provide the type of learning environments and instruction that they need. And so, I think that sort of message and that sort of just like we talked about the policy, there's not a one-size-fits-all policy and there's not a one-size-fits-all instruction. So it's exciting to see K-12 and students in Idaho, wherever it might be able to get this type of instruction that's personalized to theirs. I would encourage people, check out the report, the K-12's report. Check out our report card as well if you want to kind of have a broader understanding of the state of digital learning in the U.S. And I'm excited for this time next year where we can see hopefully growth that will have happened in the previous 365 days, and hopefully be able to see just an increase across the board for K-12 and the students that they serve. So really glad to get to participate and glad to see this report, and very excited to hear what's happening in Idaho, and I look forward to hearing the kind of innovations and things that they're thinking about in their neck of the woods, and hope it'll keep expanding and keep spreading. So glad to be here.
Well, thank you guys for coming. Nathan will be sure and put the link to the report cards. Those are just really starting to get out there. They've been live for about a week, and you guys really did an awesome job. So it's really a great tool for the nation. And Dave, faithful teacher, blogger, if you want to hear more about what Dave does in his daily day-to-day, he's always writing for Getting Smart and has great teaching ideas for online teachers and for classroom brick-and-mortar teachers. So thank you guys both for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Allison. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
And we will check back soon.